Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we are unraveling a case that literally defies all logic. We're looking at a practically impossible crime here. It's a classic locked room mystery. But get this, it unfolds right in the middle of a crowded, heavily guarded shopping mall. So let's just jump right into the anatomy of this mall murder mystery.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture the scene, all right? You've got a busy electronics store. Customers are literally everywhere. A guy named Shashir is out shopping with his wife, Lika. And then, out of nowhere, the power just cuts out. Pitch black. When the lights finally come back on, a few moments later, Shashir is just gone. Naturally, a frantic search kicks off, and eventually they find him. But he's dead. He is locked inside a display refrigerator, stabbed to death. And here is where it gets incredibly bizarre. It's a complete locked room scenario. The fridge is closed from the outside, there's blood inside, but absolutely zero bloody footprints or drag marks on the floor outside. And the craziest part? Not a single person heard a scream. Seriously, how does a man get brutally stabbed inside a metal box in a packed store without making a single sound?
And wait, it gets even crazier because the window for this crime is unbelievably tight. Let's look at the timeline. The mall's main power goes out. Shashir vanishes into the dark. And then the power is restored a mere 2 minutes later. Just 2 minutes. And shortly after that, his body is discovered locked inside the fridge. So think about what we're saying here. To pull this off, the killer had to drag a body, shove it into a fridge, stab the victim, clean up the entire outside area, and then just vanish into the crowd. All in 120 seconds. That requires literal military-level precision. Or it means we're fundamentally misunderstanding how this crime actually went down.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the physical evidence, or, well, the totally strange nature of it. Because the clues at the scene are pointing to two completely contradictory stories. First up, Shashir and his wife were actually lured to that specific store on that exact day using these fake 40% discount coupons. And second, the internal shelving panels of that exact display fridge, they had been completely removed beforehand, to make room for a human body. So right away, this points to a highly calculated, totally premeditated murder. But then you look at the weapon. The knife was driven top to bottom, which is a trajectory that's actually typical of a suicide. And the only fingerprints on the handle were Shashir's own. Add in the absolute silence, like zero cries for help, and the evidence is practically screaming that it was an impossible suicide. But the setup? The setup screams premeditated murder.
So to make any sense of this massive contradiction, we've got to do what we always do. Follow the money. And in this case, there is an absolute mountain of it. See, Shashir wasn't just your average weekend shopper. He was sitting on a massive piece of prime real estate in Mumbai. We are talking about land valued at a staggering 500 crore rupees. That is huge. So suddenly, this shifts from, just some random bizarre act of violence at a mall to a deeply motivated, incredibly high-stakes financial plot. Because let's be real, when 500 crore rupees are on the table, people will go to some unimaginable lengths to get their hands on it.
Right, so who actually wants this fortune? Let's take a look at our prime suspects. On the left here, we've got Mohit, who is this pretty ruthless builder. His motive is crystal clear. He desperately wanted Shashir's 500 crore land. But his alibi is honestly a bit confusing. He claims Shashir had actually already sold him the land and just taken the cash right before he died. Okay. Then on the right, we have Arvind, the mall security guard. Now, his motive is totally unknown, but the physical evidence against him? It's pretty damning. Investigators actually found Arvind's fingerprints directly on the mall's main power switch. Yes, the exact same switch used to plunge the whole mall into darkness for those crucial 2 minutes. So we're left with a guy with a clear motive, but a seemingly solid alibi, and a guy with zero motive, but direct physical evidence tying him to the blackout. It's a mess.
And just as investigators are gearing up to bring Arvind in for questioning, the whole investigation just hits this massive, chaotic brick wall. Arvind is found dead. Poisoned. And get this, locked inside his own security room from the inside. Literally another locked room death. And before the detectives can even begin to wrap their heads around that, Shashir's grieving wife, Lekha, and her young son from a previous marriage are kidnapped by armed goons. It's insane. The police end up tracking these kidnappers all the way to this remote bungalow down in Kerala. A massive shootout erupts, and in the tragic crossfire, Lekha's young son is accidentally shot in the kidney. So he's rushed to the hospital, just clinging to life, desperately needing a transplant. It is absolute mayhem at this point.
But then, right there in the hospital, we hit this jaw-dropping turning point that completely flips the trajectory of the entire investigation. The boy needs a kidney, and he needs it fast. And by some absolute miracle, the doctors actually find a donor. And that donor, it's none other than the recently deceased mall security guard, Arvind. I know, what are the odds, right? But when detectives look a little closer at the medical reports, they realize this isn't just some lucky blood type match. The DNA and antigens are a 100% biological match. Let that sink in. Arvind wasn't just some random compatible donor. Arvind was the boy's biological father.
So the crucial point is this. Arvind, the mall security guard, and Lekha, the grieving widow, were not strangers at all. Arvind was actually Lekha's supposedly dead first husband all along. Yep, they were legally married, living in Kerala, and had cooked up this incredibly elaborate long-term scam. Basically, they sent Lekha to a meditation camp to seduce the wealthy Shishir, marry him, and position herself as the sole heir to his 500 crore fortune. Arvind only took that job at the mall purely to set up the perfect environment for the murder. They were in on this together from day one.
But that still leaves the biggest question, right? How on earth did Arvind and Lekha force Shishir to literally kill himself without making a single sound? Well, the answer honestly sounds straight out of a science fiction movie. Weaponized hypnotism. Turns out Arvind wasn't just a security guard. The guy was an absolute master of mind control. They had originally met Shishir at that Kerala meditation camp, and over the course of several months, Arvind managed to deeply infiltrate Shishir's mental state. He completely brainwashed Shishir into deeply trusting Lekha, marrying her, and taking her to Mumbai. And on the actual day of the murder, Arvind used a hypnotic trigger. Under deep hypnosis, Shishir willingly walked into that fridge, closed the door behind him, and drove the knife into his own chest. He was entirely oblivious to the pain, firmly believing whatever alternate reality Arvind had planted in his brain. So it wasn't a murder in the traditional sense, it was an execution by suggestion. Wild, right? I mean, the plan was flawless. Shishir is dead, it looks exactly like a suicide, and Lekha was set to inherit the 500 crore plot, which she'll obviously share with her true husband, Arvind. But greed has no limits, does it? Enter the double-cross trigger. Mohit, our ruthless builder from earlier, was getting really impatient, so he secretly approached Lekha and dangled an even bigger payout in front of her, a massive 600 crore rupees. But there was a catch. She had to get Shishir to sign over the land immediately, rather than waiting for the whole inheritance process to play out. And this massive new number? It completely pushed Lekha to accelerate their timeline and drastically alter the original plan. And this brilliantly illustrates the truly terrifying depth of Lekha's greed. Because in her mind, why split 600 crore when you can just have it all to yourself? Let's walk through her ultimate betrayal here. Step 1. She orders Arvind to go ahead and execute the original plan. Hypnotize Shishir into committing suicide inside that mall fridge. Step 2. Literally as soon as the deed is done, she poisons her own husband. She slips it right into Arvind's nudge to tie up her only loose end. And then, step 3, which is truly the chilling part. As Arvind is dying inside his security room, Lekha actually uses these amateur hypnotism techniques that she picked up from him, commanding him to lock the door from the inside. She wanted to make his death look like a suicide too. But because she wasn't actually an expert, the hypnosis broke halfway through. Arvind woke up in just agonizing pain from the poison, but he was way too weak to open the door, so he ended up dying completely alone in a locked room.
Oh, and that whole kidnapping thing? Yeah, that was just a staged farce cooked up by Lekha to throw the police off her scent, which obviously backfired horribly when her own son got caught in the crossfire. Which brings us to the detective's powerful final condemnation when he finally caught her. He told her, "In your greed for money, you didn't even realize when you yourself got hypnotized. Now rot behind the bars of a jail until the hanging order comes." Lekha really thought she was this ultimate puppet master, right? Manipulating minds for a 600 crore payday. But in the very end, she was utterly blinded and practically hypnotized by her own insatiable greed, leading to her complete and utter destruction. Which kind of leaves us with a haunting question to think about. When you start manipulating reality for others, how long until you completely lose grasp of your own? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this incredibly twisted case gave you as much to think about as it did for me. Catch you next time.